It's good to be back. I missed you all for a couple of weeks, but today it was such a joy listening to the music as you were all joining, because we were listening to Mozart's Requiem, which is in fact similar to an opera in its drama and in its involvement of the orchestra, the chorus, and soloists. And of course, Mozart did write tremendous operas, and you can hear those same incredible dramatic lines in this piece, which was performed by the San Diego Symphony and the San Diego Master Chorale a couple of years ago. So it was a great lead-in, not to mention hearing Peggy Johnston play a section from Rigoletto. And today we're going to talk about opera. Welcome, Peggy. It was great. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
I know opera is your passion, and actually, I think a history lesson is in order today, because the first question I got in the chat box is, what is a staff opera musician?
Okay.
So,
well, I am, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, tell us about your time with San Diego Symphony and with the,
okay.
with the
well,
opera.
It's kind of it's long history, but I'll try and condense it. But I started as a sub musician with the San Diego Symphony in January of 1975. And I started playing with the San Diego Opera maybe in 76. And at that time, they had a pool of opera musicians. They didn't have a regular contract for the opera. And eventually, we did form a contract with the San Diego Opera. So there was the symphony contract and the opera contract for quite a number of years. And probably 10 or 15 years ago, I lose track of time, so my time is not accurate. But the symphony and the opera contracts merged. And some of the musicians from the opera who didn't have symphony contracts got into the symphony, but I was not one of those musicians. So I became an opera staff musician. And that means that I play most of the operas. It's changed a little over the years because the opera's changed, and we've had to make some adjustments. But anyway, I'm very happy with that arrangement, and you will see me at a few symphony concerts now and then. So
it's great. It's a great explanation. And this was not your first opera company. We were chatting before. You played at the Lyric Opera for several years. And
that was my first job. I think I was a junior at Northwestern when I got that job with the bass section, and they had just come off a strike. So they had 4 bass openings of 6 positions, and 3 of us were students at Northwestern, and we all were accepted. And so that I played for 4 years, and the very first opera I played with them was Salome. Wow. And that was the last opera I played with Lyric was Salome, and that is one of my all-time favorites. I love Strauss. I love playing Strauss operas, and so that was pretty exciting for me.
And was Bruno conducting then, or?
Yes, Bruno Bartoletti did most of our conducting for that. Yeah. We did have some guests, but Bruno was the main guy. Bruno Bartoletti. Very charming Italian man. So,
which is always good for opera, but yes. Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Was it unusual? Today we think nothing of having women in our bass section, but was it unusual when you started playing the bass for young women to take up the bass? I remember lots of male-populated bass sections in my time.
Well, we're still in a big minority with one bass player. And actually at one of our bass conventions, which we have every other year, the International Society of Bassists, there was a panel discussion about the lack of women bass players. And there's lots of reasons for it. I think, some people have the prejudice that we're not strong enough or big enough, which is not true. And, so anyway, I've always been kind of in a minority, but there have always been at least 1 or 2 other women that I've worked with. And I don't really think about it too much, actually.
That's good. It's good we've evolved to that point where you don't have to.
Yeah, I just keep playing. I don't worry about it. And the men I've worked with have all been delightful. We have, I think, bass players generally are a very, very friendly group of people, very easygoing, and I think it's probably because of the low notes. It just mellows us out.
Grounds you. It grounds you.
Right. Yeah.
So what made you choose the bass in the first place?
Well, I was 10 years old, and I grew up in Lombard, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago, and we had an excellent school music program. I wanted to play the clarinet, but I was taking French class at the time, and that was at the same time as the band rehearsals, so I had to be in the orchestra. And I remember sitting between my dad and the orchestra director, who was just an incredibly wonderful person. And they looked at my hands and said, well, I think they're big enough for her to play the bass, because they always need bass players. And my favorite uncle was an amateur bass player, so that might have had something to do with it. But I started playing when I was 10 on a quarter size, and I never quit. I loved playing in the orchestra. We had a wonderful junior and high school orchestra. We were recognized nationally, our high school orchestra was. And so, I've always had positive orchestra experiences. I love music. The first piece I ever remember hearing was the Cacciaturian Saber Dance. I think I was about 4 years old, because my parents played classical music all the time. So.
Well, it's great when it starts at home and you're supported that way. Nothing better. And you studied at Northwestern with Warren Benfield, who is a kind of just a giant in the bass world.
He was, yeah. He went to Curtis. He studied with Torello there, and Curtis, as you probably know, is one of the premier music conservatories in the country, if not the world. And he lived in my hometown. He lived in Lombard. He played with the Chicago Symphony. And I remember when I was about 12, I guess my orchestra teacher thought I didn't practice enough. So he said, well, have her study with Warren Benfield, because it'll give her a shot in the arm for practicing. So I rode my bike to my bass lessons with my bow case, because he had a little French bass that I could play on for my lessons. And he and my parents were good friends. They played bridge together, and he went to our church. We all went to the same church in Lombard. So we had a lot of connections other than musical. And so when it came time for college, I mean, I'd been studying with Benfield since I was 12, and my choices were Oberlin and Northwestern. And I got accepted at early admission for Northwestern. And I knew I had a great teacher, so that was kind of not a hard decision to make.
Yeah. So what high school did you go to when you were in Lombard?
I went to Glenbard East,
Sure.
Glenbard West. There was a bunch of Glenbards. Now there's a north and a south too. But
they've got great music programs in that part of the world. And
yes,
my husband was a band director for 33 years at York, and then.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh.
So it's a good musical part of the world.
Yes, very. Yeah, Cheryl Milnes grew up there too, in Downers Grove. Yeah.
So let's talk about opera. What makes opera different to perform than symphonic?
Well, we're not the center of attention, and being the kind of shy person I am, that's kind of more comfortable for me to sit in a pit, and it's more relaxing. And I also feel part of I love the human voice. I'm part of a big drama, basically. I mean, it's music, it's singing, it's sets, the whole 9 yards. And you also, the conductor you're not the main focus of the conductor, and the conductor has to watch what's going on stage. He has to watch what the singers are doing, and something could happen weird, and he has to adjust to that quickly. So as a pit musician, you have to be focused and all the time, and ready to be flexible for those changes, because no night is ever the same. And that's part of the fun and excitement of it too. But I think you just have to be really in touch, and really, with what's going on stage and in the pit.
There are always great opera stories, and they're generally focused on a singer who gets sick or has to leave the stage, or misses a cue, and then you have to jump, right? I mean.
Right. Oh yeah. And I remember a lot of times, well, of course, Chicago is a different ball game than San Diego Opera, and it's But I remember back in the early days with San Diego Opera, a singer would have a cadenza and end on a note, and we have to come in on the note we have. And sometimes the singer ended on a different note than we came in on. So that was always a little unnerving. But I remember one time in Chicago, though, that we did Norma. That's one of the operas we did in my first season there, which is a big, huge bel canto opera. And the singer, the soprano, was, I think she was pretty young, but she was having a bad night, and she had a sword that she had to hit a gong with. And I remember she threw that sword across the stage. She was so upset. Performance, but
added drama for the evening.
Yeah. So
you also do you still teach? You're a teacher as well?
No, I taught privately. I've taught off and on private bass lessons. I never had a big studio, but I don't do that. And I did substitute teach in the San Diego City schools for 17 years. And the reason I started doing that was when the symphony went bankrupt in '96. My husband is a trombone player, and we were both playing in the symphony. So we had the opera, but that was it. And, I needed work. And I always enjoyed helping out in my kids' classrooms. So I thought, that would be fun to be in a classroom. And I have no education classes. I was a performance major at Northwestern. And so I'm not a music educator. And but I took a test. You have to take a test called the CBEST, California, to check the basic skills test. And I had to have an interview, and I had to be fingerprinted. And they hired me because they needed music teachers, and not a lot of subs can do music. So it was extremely interesting to do. And it wasn't always fun. There were days when I just wanted to walk out of the classroom. And, I worked a lot at San Diego School for Creative and Performing Arts, and I sat down and figured it out one day. I had been in every single classroom at that school. And I have taught PE. I mean, they let you teach anything, which is kind of crazy when you have an emergency credential, but I did, and I kind of learned what I liked doing and what I felt comfortable doing over the years. And when I decided it was time to retire because I could get a small pension, and I was looking at Social Security, it was like the last few months of teaching were really fun because I knew this was my last few months. So, but there was a lot of good things, and there were some pretty terrifying things about being a substitute teacher. So
in terms of students today, students that might tune in and they're bass players and whatever, what's your advice to them? I mean, after all of these years of playing, how do you stay motivated? What's the life in music?
I think that if you are going to be serious about, being a musician, you need to find a good private teacher. That is like bottom line. You need to have a space that you can practice every day. I mean, some kids think if they practice 3 hours in one day during the week, it's gonna be good, but it's not. It's better to do 15 or 30 minutes a day, every day. And the teacher, those are the two most important things, I think. And if you can get a good instrument and learn how to take care of it. I spend a lot of time teaching kids how to, take care of their instruments, because they don't, a lot of them don't have an appreciation for what it is.
And what does that entail? I mean, some of these instruments are maybe not ancient in the case of basses, but old.
Yeah, well, it's sort of up to the teacher to make sure the instruments are maintained. And when you have your own instrument, especially a string instrument, you need to wipe the rosin off the fingerboard. I know a lot of kids don't do that. And just keep it, when the strings need to be changed, when the bow hair needs to be redone. Sometimes bows in public schools are so cheap, it's better just to buy a whole new bow than spend money getting it rehaired. But I don't know that much about wind and brass instruments, but string instruments, you know, you don't want to knock them around because they're going to break. They're wooden. And so it's, you know, just a few basic things like that. And they're also more expensive to maintain than wind instruments, I think, although I hope my wind friends tell me I'm wrong. But anyway, yeah, string instruments are pretty expensive to maintain properly, especially if you have a really good one.
So we talked a little bit about when you started and you were young. One of the questions from our audience today is, what is the physicality of playing the bass, and are there problems related to it, or how do you kind of keep in shape to do that?
Well, that's a great question, because I think one of the fundamental things, which I always emphasize with my private students, is your posture. And if you're relaxed, you relax as much of your body as you can. And if you have good posture, then you're going to minimize any physical problems. A lot of bass players have back problems, neck problems. But if you, and I also, I take dance classes, and one of the reasons besides that I love to dance is that to keep myself in physical shape, because it is a very physical instrument. I mean, you need a lot more muscle to play the bass than you need to play other string instruments. I mean, it's a little easier to hold, I think, than the violin or the viola, but it is still, you have to use, you know, a lot of upper body strength to play.
And the strings themselves obviously are larger, and
yeah, you have to use more physical effort. But you know, I've been playing for so long, since I was 10 years old, that I think my body sort of grew into the bass. I don't really think about, I mean, I don't have aches and pains, partly because I've taken some Alexander technique classes, which are how to show you how to use your body to its best, you know, just how to use it to its best maximum efficiency. That's what I'm trying to say. Right. And of course the dance classes help, because you're always thinking about posture and correct body alignment. So
how often do you have to change a bass string?
These strings, well, not as often as other strings, and I'm probably due for a change about now, but they kind of go a little dead after a while. They don't actually break. Although my dad, when I was a kid, he used to go on business trips, and he found some music store in Milwaukee and kept buying me these E strings, which is the lowest and the biggest string on the bass. And they broke because they were just, I think they probably had rotted away in the music store, but that's really unusual for a string to break. I mean, it's usually dies and starts sounding pretty dead before that, sort of like tennis balls. So.
And does it take a while then to play them in, or is it pretty instant?
No, it's not instant. And once you put them on, you have to tune them up, and you have to keep tuning them up for several days, because they tend to go flat. And, you know, it's kind of like stretching them out, I guess. But forgot the rest of that. Anyway.
So it takes a while to get them in.
You do play them in a little bit, but that's pretty quick. It's a matter of maybe a week or so. Yeah.
And where do you get them? Where do you buy them?
Well, I get them online. I've used the same brand for years, and there's a online bass company, and actually based in Dana Point. So I've actually been to their shop a couple of times, but they're up there online. Yeah. So there's different places. Robertson's in New Mexico is a really great place for instruments and instrument stuff.
And what are they made of?
They're metal. They're made of steel. When I started playing, I was still using gut strings, which is what the Baroque players used. And gradually, when I transitioned from high school to college, people started using metal strings, and they're brighter. They've got a louder sound. And I used nylon strings after the gut, and then went to metal strings. And I've been using metal strings for my whole career, basically.
It's interesting because I know because I read your bio on our website, but I know that your favorite time of music history is the late 19th, early 20th century. And of course, you loved Richard Strauss, and opera came, into full bloom at that time with those rich sounds made possible by the invention of metal strings and bigger sounds from instruments. So
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it makes me, I kind of like to imagine sometimes what some of the Beethoven symphonies would have sounded like played on the instruments and strings of that time. And would Beethoven have really been shocked happily to hear his symphonies today? It's an interesting thing to think about.
Well, and in much smaller concert halls as well.
Right. Yes. Yeah. In fact, just going to Europe, I realized the difference between the concert halls here in the United States and the ones in Europe are shaped differently, and they're generally smaller.
Right.
I think the older ones anyway. We just took a wonderful trip to Germany last fall and heard the Berlin Philharmonic in their hall, which is was like a lifetime experience for me, a highlight of my life to hear that orchestra in that hall. It was great.
Yeah, and Mozart was playing his piano concertos in coffee shops or the upstairs of the coffee shop. I mean, it was tiny. So that obviously once we needed to rely on ticket sales for earned revenues, halls got bigger, audiences got bigger, and the sound of orchestras got bigger. So,
yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think the Civic Theater, we've played opera in there for as long as I've been here and before, and it's really way too big for opera because we have to be very careful about covering the singers, and it's just, it seats almost 3,000 people, and it's really, but I know
the Metropolitan in New York is not dissimilar. It's vast.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But you go someplace like La Scala or the Staatsoper in Berlin, and you're very close to the stage. And you're right, it's much smaller. Rome Opera House.
Right.
Okay, one more question, and then I have another opera question. Where do you have your bows rehaired, and how often?
Oh, okay. I do that more frequently because the hair wears much more quickly. And I go to a local guy who's actually a very good cellist. His wife is a violinist in the orchestra, and he has a shop on Adams Avenue, and he does a great job. He also makes bows, and and I do it probably, it really depends on how much I'm playing. I think my bow needs a rehair right now, but I'm going to be playing La Boheme outdoors, which is very hard on bow hair. So I'm going to wait till after that and then get it rehaired. But I usually get it rehaired a couple of times a year. But like I say, it depends on how much I'm playing and if I'm playing outdoors a lot. So.
Well, that was my next lead-in question. And the exciting news that the San Diego Opera is doing La Boheme outdoors at the Arena, a drive-in concert starting a week from Saturday, I think, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So are you looking forward to that experience?
Very much. And it's kind of funny because I'm not really a big fan of playing outdoors because when you play a string instrument, it's hard on the pitch, it's hard on the bow hair, but I am so glad to be back playing. And I'm really, really happy about it. And the schedule will be much the same as it would have been in the, if we'd been indoors. So we're gonna do 4 performances. I think the singers are going to be wonderful, and I'm looking forward to seeing my colleagues and playing with them, and I'm not worried. I think it looks like it's going to be set up very safely, and I'm just really excited about it. I'm glad we're doing it.
Well, we've worked closely with the opera to assure safety of everyone, and there are separate stages for the singers and for the instrumentalists. Rafael Payari is conducting, of course.
Yes, I'm excited about working with him too. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and so we really encourage everybody to come out.
Great.
And look forward to it. Before we turn to your closing piece, which I'd love for you to introduce, one of my favorite operas, as a matter of fact, Verdi, we can also say that we are going to be doing a live performance at the Conrad this week to be recorded and streamed, and we'll be sending out a press release about it tomorrow, but look for that in your inbox. It'll be broadcast on YouTube and Facebook and on Symphony Stream at 7 o'clock on Friday, October 23rd, so the night before the opera. So you can make it a musical weekend. And the musicians will be playing together live, and at the core of it is a piece of Beethoven, the Beethoven Triple Concerto, which would have started our season had we been able to open the 2021 season. And that will have Lisa Weilerstein cello and Enon Barnaton piano and Jeff Thayer violin, as was originally announced. So we're very excited about this. And for all of you listening today, I wanted to give you a sneak peek of that because it'll be coming out in an announcement very soon. So Peggy, tee up Otello of Verdi.
Well, it's based on, of course, the play Othello by Shakespeare. And the bass solo, it's actually a section solo, which I've played numerous times. And it comes right after Desdemona sings her lullaby and says her evening prayer, and right before Otello comes into the bedroom and kills her, because of course Iago has poisoned his mind and against her and has made him think she's having an affair with somebody else. But so this kind of is a very dramatic thing with the low E on the bass, but you have the whole section playing usually. I think once in a while they do it with one player, but usually it's the whole section. And it's very exciting. And he gradually comes in and he puts out the candles, and then she's laying there, and then but he's angry, and but you can hear that in the music, so it's a lot of fun to do. It's very dramatic. I think it's wonderfully dramatic.
Well, we're looking forward to hearing it next, and thank you so much for being with us today. It was really great for everyone to get to know you.
Thank you. It was fun.